Hi there, this is David Weiss, your board game concierge here at 401 Games. And this week's Smorgasboard game is Fallout Shelter, the board game, which is based on the popular base building app, which in turn is based on the very popular Fallout FPS RPG franchise. It's published by Fantasy Flight and designed by Andrew Fisher, who also designed the, I think, very excellent Fallout board game, which is actually, I think, one of the better tabletop ports of a board game out there. So let's look in the box and see if Fallout Shelter, the board game, is for you. In Fallout Shelter, the board game, 2 to 4 players play rival vault dwellers who are competing to take over the job of overseer after the tragic and unexplained death of the last one. The winner is the candidate who creates the most happiness, i.e. victory points, over the course of the game. Fallout Shelter, the board game, is a worker placement game, plain and simple, with a few extra bits and bobs thrown in. Each player begins with 2 vault dwellers, which are unique sculpts, I'd like to point out, and they take turns placing them on available spaces in the vault, paying the cost in red, if there is one, until everyone has been placed, or you pass, but generally you want to place if you possibly can. At the start of the game, only the ground floor or top floor of the vault actions are available, except for these ones here, which are unique to each player. They're the elevator shaft, and only that colored player can place there. Usually, you place them there to build a new room, but you also get 2 victory points, 2 happiness. So each of these are the same for each player. Now, of the top floor spaces, you can create new vault dwellers, which give you extra actions, which is good. Let me just show you them close up. So in the Wasteland, these actions let you take items, which I'll talk about in a bit. This one here lets you take the first player token and train one of your dwellers, which I'll talk about, or create a new dweller. This one here can create a new dweller or train somebody. This one here you can only place on to heal an injured vault dweller, which I'll talk about. That's the symbol for healing. It does look like a key, but it's actually a hypodermic. And then the 3 cards on the other side are all resource generation. So water and food and electricity, which are the 3 resources in the game, each of which is symbolized by a cube, and you can store up to 6 of each resource in your player mat there. So, some spaces, not any of these, but some of the other ones in the game require you to place 2 dwellers. So for instance here, the living quarters, you can create new dwellers, but you have to place 2 vault dwellers at once. The little chain symbol there means that you have to place 2 at once. The letters in the circles, so you'll see here that there's a C, and in some of the other ones we saw other letters. They're not prerequisites. What happens is if you place a vault dweller that has been trained there appropriately, you get double the reward. So in the water treatment plant, if you place a worker there, you will get 1 water, but if they have been trained in perception, you get 2 water. So how do you train them? Using the training spaces. So at the end of the turn, normally when you place a guy on a space, you get the resources right away. But for training, at the end of the round when your workers all come home, you will place them on top here, in one of the spaces. And again, if you're a Fallout fan, you will recognize special as the stats that run the game: strength, perception, endurance, constitution, intelligence, agility, luck. So when you place a guy there on the next round, if you take your worker, your dweller, from that space, you will get double the reward. So as I said, at the end of the turn, all dwellers come off the map with your new recruits. If you have recruited anyone, they will add to your pool, which gives you more actions, which is good, always good. In Fallout Shelter, the board game, though, all training is temporary. So once you take a guy from here and place them on a space, they forget their training, which obviously isn't that authentic, but it does really streamline play a lot because you don't have to keep track of stuff. Now, starting on the second turn, before everyone places their dwellers, we're gonna look to see if threats have spawned in the vault. So starting in the top row, we're gonna roll the 2 dice once, and sort of like Settlers of Catan, depending on what number comes up, if it's a 7, then nothing happens. But every other room on the top row has little numbers which show the spawning points. So if I rolled a 5, for instance, I would take the top card of the threat deck, which are these cool transparencies. In this case, it's a rad scorpion, and it goes on top of the 5th space, blocking out whatever action is there and presenting a new action, which must be dealt with before you can do what's on the bottom. So in this case, a rad scorpion, if you want to fight it, you place a dweller there. If they have perception, they'll get double the rewards, which in this case is 2 happiness and 2 resources of your choice. But you have to roll the dice, and it has to be 8 or more to beat it. If you do, great. If not, your worker dweller gets injured, they lie down, and at the end of the turn, they come off the board, still lying down, and they can only be placed on a later round on a space which has the little sick dweller on it, so you can heal them. And there are other rooms you can build to heal them. Now, some of the threats aren't monsters, but they're things like fire, or a raider, which lets you actually get items, which I'll talk about, or this one's fun because it's just a power outage. So in this case, you don't have to roll the dice, but it does cost you 2 energy, and you get the reward. So that brings me to items. So at any given time, there are 3 face-up items, and there are spaces which give you an item as a reward or let you wipe the items that are already there and then take a new item. And items are, again, all uniformly good. Some are more useful situationally than others. Now, some of them are ones that exhaust. So this shotgun is very useful because once per turn, you can exhaust it to add to a fighting action. Others give you bonus points at the end of the game. So in this case, if you buy the Yaogwai hide, then you will get a victory point for every other item you own, which is a piece of clothing, and every item does belong to a category. So for instance, if you own the nightwear, and you then got the Yaogwai hide, then the nightwear would give you a victory point at the end of the game. So, the last thing to talk about is building more rooms. So to build a room, every room that is available, and there's always 3 available, costs resources. Now, sometimes they are all specified, and this is where energy comes in a lot. So to build the nuclear reactor, which is a much more efficient energy builder, you need to have 5 energy. You spend the cubes here from your personal tray, then you build the room on either side of the elevator or away from that, adjacent to a room you already own. And on a future turn, threats can spawn there too. So if this were below the wasteland, then on a future turn, if I rolled a 2 for my level, then this section here would be covered with a threat. One of the ways for the game to end is for a player to build their 6th room. There are only room for 6 rooms on each floor. The other good thing about building rooms is that if another player places a dweller on one of your rooms, you get a free resource of your choice, which is very good, even if that means you don't get to place on that action this round. So building a room that you know is going to be popular is a good strategy. The other way for the game end to be triggered is for the threat deck to be used up, which is much more likely in a 4-player game than in a 2- or 3-player game. And that is the world of Fallout Shelter, the board game. So, is Fallout Shelter the board game for you? Well, if you like the Fallout Shelter app or the Fallout video game universe, and you like worker placement games, then you probably will. On the other hand, my partner has never played Fallout Shelter, the app, or any of the Fallout video games, and definitely doesn't like post-apocalyptic first-person shooters, but she loved Fallout Shelter, the board game. Totally unexpected. She loved the artwork, the little sculpts, the threat deck, transparency cards, even the radioactive green resource cubes. She just liked the look of the whole thing, and it was easy to learn, and the gameplay was intuitive. The only thing that disappointed her was the box, which looks like it's a lunchbox, but the handle is just painted on. So Fantasy Flight, if you ever do a deluxe version with the real handle, I know one sale you will definitely make. So, with all that in mind, click on the link below to order your own copy of Fallout Shelter, the board game. This is David Weiss, your board game concierge at 401 Games. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Ciao.